Hello and welcome to All Villa No Filler, a podcast all about Aston Villa, the world's greatest football team. Well, the season started with a terrible loss at Newcastle and a horrible looking injury to Tyrone Mings. We'll get to all that in a moment. Plus, Frankie raises the temperature with another of his spicy questions. But first things first, Frankie, how are you?
Yeah, I'm not too bad. I didn't actually get to go to the Aston Villa Newcastle game, though. Of course, I watched it, but I went to an Arsenal game. Have I
Turncoat.
betrayed? Yeah, I'd be more than happy to talk all about that game if you want me to, instead of what happened up in on Tyneside. Uh, yeah, it was a pretty cool experience. Friend, had a ticket, took me along, and Martin Odegaard live and Bukayo Saka live. I am extremely impressed by, and I think Aston Villa should make a bid for both of them now. I think they'd both fit in very nicely at Aston Villa. So
Yeah, I
I'm
reckon so. They
sure
could
they'd
squeeze in.
sure they'd be happy to leave the Arteta project and join up with Professor Unai in B6. I'm convinced of it. But yeah, that was my thrilling day. I watched the England ladies as well and the Australia
Yeah,
women in the
yeah, yeah.
most epic World Cup penalty shootout I've ever seen.
Well, how are
Um,
things going to work out between you and your partner,
I
Frankie?
know.
Because obviously she's Australian. You're an
Yeah.
you're an Englishman, and I mean, how are you going to square up for that one?
Well, as well, it was Australia versus Ireland earlier this tournament as well. So there's been a fair bit of, been Irish as well. Been a fair bit of falling out between us during this World Cup. But yeah, we'll agree to sit at opposite ends of the couch. I think in this upcoming game.
Very
Uh,
diplomatic of you,
yeah.
Frankie. Well done.
So yeah, as you can see, I'm doing everything I can to put off the inevitable of talking about a game
Well,
that
well,
happened, but we might as well.
Frankie. Well, I have got an anecdote for you,
Oh yeah.
which you might find humorous. Hopefully, our listeners will too. So, obviously, Frankie, recently you were at my wedding,
I was.
and at a wedding you have a ring which is put on your finger like
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
So, I was watching the Villa game, and needless to say, the performance and ultimately result was stressing me out. So, I'm not used to wearing jewelry, so I was sort of playing with my ring, and then I took it off my finger, and then I was thinking, oh, which finger does it go back on? And I put it on this finger, which is the
Oh,
wrong finger,
yeah.
and I couldn't get it off.
Oh.
And I was pulling and pulling, Frankie, and it was making no difference. And my finger was swelling up like a balloon. I had to go to A&E
Oh, did
to
you?
have a
Oh, no.
to have a nurse yank it off my finger. So Aston Villa, I don't know how if I can get any sort of compensation from Aston Villa Football Club for that.
Yeah.
Some sort of damages or whatever. But yes, the stress of watching the first game of the season where we lost 5-1 to Newcastle caused me consequentially to go to A&E
Wow.
to have a ring removed. It wasn't my fault. It
It's
wasn't my fault. It was Villa's fault.
it's just
Okay.
injuries galore for Villa at the moment, isn't
It
it?
was
You have topped
honestly,
it off.
I cannot advise anyone who wears rings listening. I cannot tell you enough. Listen, heed my warning. Do not put it on the wrong finger and get it stuck because I endured 5 minutes of utter agony having a nurse
Oh.
yank it off my finger while explaining to her that I'd only been married for 10 days.
Oh my God. There are many an anecdote, George, that we can share about your many calamitous
My
foibles. And
mishaps.
this is another one to
It's
add
up
to
there.
the
It's up there, isn't it? It was
yeah.
fantastic. After the show, Frankie, I'll send you a picture of what my finger looked like with my ring on the wrong finger. Anyway, we'll move on from painful fingers to painful football results. Obviously, as we all know, 5-1 Newcastle Villa thumped upon Tyneside. What did you make of it, Frankie? If we can dissect, if we could do a post mortem of the defeat.
Yeah, look, it was a tough old watch, wasn't it? Look, I think the main thing to talk that I can think about really is Tyrone Mings, and the reason I say that is because I think watching him and be in such distress, watching him be clearly, in an incredible amount of agony, and knowing in himself that this was a really serious injury, that really took the wind out of my sails watching it as a fan. I
Yeah.
didn't really care about the result at the end. If that sounds really weird, doesn't it? You lose 5-1 in the first day of the season, but I couldn't stop thinking about Mings really, because this guy has been such a massive part of Aston Villa. Such a I think possibly our greatest signing of this century is definitely up there. I don't think we'd have got promoted without him. I don't think we'd have stayed up without him. I don't think we'd have got into Europe without him. So everything that he's contributed to Aston Villa meant that he deserved to experience Europe with Aston Villa this season.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely devastating to think that he's not going to get that now this season. It was really tough to watch that. And if it took the wind out of my sails, I think it took the wind out of a lot of Villa fan sails, just reading what's going around on online. I think it could have been similar for the players. I think it's hard to watch that as a player, and it's difficult for Pau Torres to then just come in and sort of play that role and be that commanding figure when you're so new to the club.
Yeah.
And I think it was a tough day for Pau Torres, but look, he's a quality player and he'll get over that and he'll grow into his role and get used to it. But it was a tough day for him to come in and play the Mings role essentially at a stadium that is really difficult to go to, particularly on the first day of the season. Yeah. And against a team that is so well coached as Newcastle. So I think it's a bit of a freak result. I do think the injuries to Buendia impacted where certain players played on the pitch and certain players have started. For instance, I don't think Bailey would have started if Buendia was available. So that had an impact, of course. And then the day after, and then Mings gets a bloody injury as well during the game, and that impacted the team as well. So there were spells actually where I think Villa were doing fine. It was 2-1. It was very competitive. And it wasn't until Consa made the mistake for the third goal. Brilliant finish from Alex Isak, who's a wonderful striker. It wasn't until that mistake that it really felt like Villa just kind of mentally caved in a bit. And the high line was just getting exposed time and time again. So yeah, I think 5-1 was actually quite freakish, though they had a lot of chances and could have scored more. But I think the main thing for me really is that Mings getting injured, what it meant for the team on the day, but what it also means in the sort of near to long term as well for Villa, because quite frankly, we don't tend to play well without him, do we?
No, we don't. And I mean, we said ahead of the game and all through pre-season, essentially since the fixtures came out, what a difficult place going to Newcastle is for the opening game of the season. Our record there isn't great by any stretch anyway. So to go there, when they're buoyant, they're about to experience Champions League football. They made some decent signings as well this summer. They're a very good team. Obviously, they finished top 4 last season. So to go there first game of the season was always going to be difficult. I thought ahead of the game, just getting away from St James's Park with a point would have been seen as a really, really positive result. Obviously, the scoreline isn't ideal. It's the worst defeat Emery suffered as Villa manager. That must sting for him as well as the rest of the players. But I think you're right. I think it's down to a lot of factors which were kind of outside our control in many ways. The fact that Mings did go down injured very early on in the match, and he went down so distressed. And I think that will have an impact on players, both thinking about him, but also thinking about themselves. I imagine because these are only a week ago the same thing happened to Emi Buendia in training. So we don't know the extent of Mings' injury yet, I should say, as of this evening. But we can only assume, given how he reacted and how he was taken off the pitch, that it is going to be a serious injury which will keep him sidelined for a number of months, like Emi Buendia's. But yeah, both of those things happening in such quick succession you'd assume would have some sort of mental impact on the players that are playing the game. And then, as you say, the expectation then on Pau Torres to come in to make his debut in those circumstances, not ideal. Certainly not something that I think Emery was expecting to do, because how often do you really substitute centre halves? It's really only when injuries occur. So for him to do that and try and have the same impact as Tyrone Mings, having only recently joined the club and being unfamiliar with the Premier League, it's a big ask. And yeah, we were caught out in terms of kind of, I think our communication skills at the back were lacking, and that allowed Newcastle in to have as many opportunities as they did have. That being said, I think you have to look at some positives. Diaby scoring his debut goal, lovely finish from him. Obviously, that was to make it 1-1 at the time, and from then you're thinking, okay, we can make a real game of this. I think that the goal that cost us really, and you mentioned this, is the 3-1. Consa's mistake, and I've seen a few people on social media really hammering him. I think that's incredibly unfair. Consa has improved dramatically under Emery. He's gone back to the levels he was playing at. I think either first or second season with us, where he was, being linked with the likes of Liverpool. I remember, he really has improved his game. Perhaps there's something to be said for the fact that him and Mings had such a strong partnership together that as soon as you take Mings out of the equation, then Consa is going to struggle. Um, there is something to be said for that. I think historically clubs have been successful based on centre half partnerships being solid. Think about Ferdinand and Vidic, for example. Terry and Carvalho, those two play together for such a long time. And I think there is something to be said about a centre half partnership that plays together week in, week out. And having that disrupted means that the team can suffer generally. And then, as you say again, the fact when Dio had such a good pre-season, so unfortunate. I was expecting a really big season from him this year. I know a lot of Villa fans were. And for him to be ruled out for months and months and bringing in Leon Bailey, who, to be fair to him, hasn't had the best pre-season and didn't really have the best of games against Newcastle and was substituted at half time. Whether that was tactical or based on his performance, I'm not sure. I think Emery did want to change things up anyway to strengthen the centre of midfield, to be honest, because Newcastle were kind of running through the middle of us quite a bit. But yeah, I mean, a very bad day at the office. It's a shame that it was the first day in the office. But I think you have to have some perspective and say it's a very, very long season. These sorts of results are quite freak results. And if you are going to have them, you have them the first game of the season because the only way is up. And I'm sure it will focus the minds, sharpen the minds for the game against Everton.
Yeah, and I think like before the injury, I mean, Villa hadn't started brilliantly in the sense like Kamara was fast asleep for the first goal for Tonali. That's not what you want to see so quickly in a game. First game of the season, you want us all to be sharp and at it. And Bailey didn't track brilliantly or got caught, I think, out left or on Villa's right, sorry. And then for the second goal as well, I was still sort of puzzled as to why Matty Cash was sort of standing where he was standing within the line. He sort of was playing, I think it was Botman on side, and whether he's been pushed or pulled or. And then also, I mean, the lines not being drawn added to a little bit of confusion as to, Isak kind of being in an offside position, but Botman, I guess, was onside when he played it. And then a kind of a weird one. Not sure about it. And then another goal yesterday, I think it was maybe Wilson, his goal. Again, that was another one that looked so tight. I was quite surprised. I didn't see the lines for that either. But yeah, so Villa hadn't started brilliantly, but actually were competitive. And Diaby, as you say, scored a really good goal. And Diaby, to be honest, was the one bright spot. I think Watkins actually played all right as well. But
yeah,
I think they both.
And there was a moment at 3-1 as well where some really good play from Watkins sent Botman on his bum, and it came out to Matty Cash, who inexplicably managed to fire it over the bar. He should have scored.
Absolutely should
have scored. And who knows, at 3-2, obviously that changed the momentum, and you never know. But I do think that third goal was a bit of a killer because I think psychologically, they scored that third goal. What was it, 70th minute or 70 odd minutes? So you got 30 minutes then to try and get to score at least two more goals at a sort of raucous St. James's Park, which is always going to be hard. And I think heads just kind of went really, and then the two other goals came after that. So
with a new player as well in Harvey Barnes, who's kind of set up for that sort of bursting from deep. And,
absolutely, yeah.
He's on his debut. He wants to do well, and
so another goal against Villa. He did it last season, didn't he, as well? Of course. So
yeah, does it quite a bit. So yeah, so I think just a bit freakish, but at the same time, there were some really bad performances. I thought the right-hand side was really poor. I thought Cash and Bailey didn't do themselves any favours whatsoever for, people who might doubt them. And then Luca Dean on the left, I miss Alex Moreno, is what I would say.
We've got some bit. I mean, that's another thing we need to make a point of. Obviously with Mings and Buendia, they're going to be long term out, but the likes of Ramsey, who we can't. He is a bit talismanic, really. Ramsey. He's a
really important.
He's a game changer in many ways, and and he's been out for a while, but he should be back fairly soon. Moreno should be back fairly soon. He's not a long-term injury doubt. It's just kind of more medium term, so he will be back. And yeah, and I think with those players back in the team, we will see improvements. But it is interesting with Tyrone Mings because of how integral he is. I think we had a
Yeah.
conversation either on this podcast or privately about players who you really don't want to see injured. With Buendia, I mean, you don't want to see any players injured, obviously.
Yeah.
But in terms of kind of, players to cover for them, Buendia is a loss. But I think for Mings, because of what else he brings aside from his performances, he's an excellent defender. But leadership qualities,
Yeah.
organizational qualities, all that stuff is so important. He is arguably a bigger loss, and it'll be interesting to see how Emery factors that into essentially the last few weeks of the transfer window, whether that is going to have a bearing on the type of player that he brings in. If it's another centre half to cover for him, he has to have the same kind of qualities that Tyrone Mings has.
Yeah.
But where is that player, and will they be willing to join maybe as a stopgap until Mings returns, or on a short-term deal? You don't know. It's going to be difficult. But then again, that's why Emery's earning the money he is.
Well, I've always dreamt of a Maguire playing for Aston Villa, George. Harry, now is your moment. But I think, I mean, look, like, Aston Villa fans, we've been very optimistic going into this new season. Some people probably say, "Oh, the podcast has been hyping it up" or whatever. I don't think there's any like hyping up. I think it's essentially justified optimism from how good we've been since Unai Emery came into this club, and that, like, for the first time in absolutely bloody years, we look like a team who can compete with pretty much anybody. And I think we absolutely should be like excited about going into this season. I think that the truth is that having two major injuries happen the day before the season starts and on your first day of the season, that it would impact any club. And like, to have Moreno and Ramsey out, essentially that's our entire left-hand side is injured. And that the left-hand side was the strongest part of our team last year. So to have all four of those players now just gone is like, well, like, Man City would have problems if Haaland, Rodri, and De Bruyne all got injured, and Kyle Walker. Like, they're just, even they would like find the problems. So Villa have been really unlucky with these injuries, and I think that do I think that more transfers possibly could have been done already, or maybe there were positions that I'm sort of surprised still haven't been covered yet? Yeah, but I don't know. I think the way I look at it is, Man United lost 6-1 to Man City 10, 11 years ago. And the next week, they came back and they beat Everton 1-0. We have to show that kind of winning mentality. And, this team has proven it has a winning mentality under Emery. I'm sure Emery's going to be with them all week, working on it. I do think with the caveat that the injuries are going to be impactful. And I think I did say I thought there'd be a bit of a middling start to the season as we adapted to the new players, maybe some tweak tactics. But now, with these injuries, I'm particularly of the belief that will happen. But I think that once, particularly Moreno and Ramsey come back, once maybe one or two signings fit in and we start to figure out exactly their best roles, then I think hopefully we can start to find the momentum. And it'll probably take a few more games than we would like. But I think I'm still very positive about where Villa can go this season. And we just have to use this horrible day out in Newcastle as a character building exercise, George.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think my middle finger can take another Villa thrashing. So for the sake of that alone, let's go to Everton and get a result, please.
I was at George's wedding last week, but our friendship could be on shaky ground as I ask the spicy question. And today, George, I'm asking you, what is it like to get your ring stuck on your middle finger? No.
Very painful.
I'm asking you, where do Villa need to improve before the transfer window slams shut?
Well, I mean, today's been a very interesting day from a Villa transfer perspective, hasn't it? We haven't discussed yet this sort of quite bizarre Jack Harrison situation. Two very eminent football journalists in Fabrizio Romano and David Ornstein reporting that Jack Harrison was on the cusp of joining Villa, despite having a medical at Everton. However, officials at Villa Park have just realised that Jack Harrison's injured, and so therefore are unwilling to complete the deal. So he probably will move to Everton, who don't seem to have such concerns. It's all very odd. I mean, you'd
Weird,
think
yeah.
if you were interested in signing a player, you'd at least at the bare minimum you'd kind of know if he was injured or not.
I do wonder if that's true though. I wonder if from one of the
Yeah,
maybe
I
it's
mean,
been
obviously,
reported that
a lot of this is
yeah.
speculation, as
I think Villa would know he was
transfer rumors
injured.
tend to be.
Surely they'd
Well,
yeah,
you'd like
surely
to think so.
yeah
You'd like to think so, but that's I mean, it's an interesting line, isn't it?
yeah.
If that is true or not. But either way, it does seem that we were on the cusp of signing him, and for whatever reason, injury or not, it seems like we are pulling out. But I mean, he's an interesting player. I mean, he certainly would strengthen the squad. I'm not entirely sure he would be an automatic starter. I mean, there's no, he is a winger, and at the moment we don't have them, or we have players that are not in the greatest form in terms of either Buendia is out for a while, and obviously Bailey is not in the best of form himself. So Harrison would come in and potentially take that starting slot, or at least compete for it. Um, but obviously that's not happening anyway, so we can stop talking about it. But yeah, I mean, obviously that side of the pitch clearly is an area that we will strengthen in. I'm sure. I mean, Zaniolo, I'm not sure what's going on with that at the moment. He seems like we've reached some sort of agreement with him on a personal level, but there might be some issues with Galatasaray in terms of ironing out the actual nature of that transfer. But that certainly does seem to be a goer as slowly as it is happening. It looks like it is happening, and he's an interesting prospect. It seems like Galatasaray fans aren't too sad to see him go. From what I've sort of been reading, I don't know how much of that is down to the fact that sometimes players will criticize players for leaving just because they're leaving, regardless of whether they've been in good form for the club or not. But he's been in recent good form. He has scored
Done
a
well
number
at
of goals for
Galatasaray,
them.
yeah.
He's only 24. He's certainly got a few more years at a decent level. He's previously played for Roma. I mean, Monchi was the sporting director there when he brought him to Roma. Um, it seems like he has got a little bit to prove. He is an Italian international. But hopefully he's a player that Emery can work with and improve and develop. So we'll obviously keep an eye on that one. And then obviously, given the injuries that we've had in the last 24 hours, particularly Mings, it's whether we need another centre half or whether he's happy with Pau Torres, Conser starting the next game, or maybe going for
Diego Carlos.
Carlos. Maybe Carlos features because Carlos does have a similar sort of physicality to Tyrone Mings. He might operate in a similar sort of way. He is a left-sided centre half, so maybe he would slot in there. But whether he's 100% fully fit after another, he suffered a horrible injury last year. That remains to be seen. But yes, I mean, we sort of alluded to this earlier in the show, and maybe a lot of Villa fans might not like this idea, but I can totally see the benefit to this. There have been some tenuous links anyway. I wouldn't, necessarily read too much into it. But if it's true, I would very much be keen on Harry Maguire coming to Villa, because I think he operates in a similar way to Tyrone Mings in terms of, as I say, his physicality, his kind of aerial prowess, his strength, but ultimately as well, his leadership skills as well. He is a former Man United captain. He he leads the line for England as well, and he's got a point to prove. I think he absolutely needs to leave United. I think he has put in some poor performances, but I think for both parties, I think it would be beneficial if he did move on. And I think at a club like Villa, he really could rejuvenate himself and build up his reputation again, and play because he's not getting into the United team. He needs to play for England prospects too. Although Southgate plays him regardless. But yeah, I think a manager like Emery and a club like Villa could be a really good place for him to come in and play that kind of Tyrone Mings role. I don't know how you feel about that, Frankie.
Yeah, I think I wonder about the money situation at Villa. I do wonder, the loans we're trying to do with Harrison, that didn't happen, and then the loan with Zaniolo. I do wonder slightly about FFP and where we are with it. So Harry Maguire, I think he would be a really good signing. Yeah, I actually do think coming to somewhere like Aston Villa would actually be a really good move for him now because we're on a bit of an ascendant moment, and I think that he'd be a big character. I think, and I think would work. yeah, I think he would work well at Villa. But I think the issue there, what's his salary? I'd say he's probably on very, very big wages at Man United.
I mean, that's probably the reason why he hasn't left already, frankly.
Exactly, yeah. And I think that's that. Yeah, I wonder where Villa are on salaries and how much we can spend. Really, it's always a bit of a mystery. You just don't really know. So yeah, I think. I mean, otherwise, Zaniolo, 2 ACL injuries he's had before, so he's been very unfortunate with injuries. He is a very talented player. Again, there's going to be an adaptation process for him coming to the Premier League as well. Different standard or different style to Italy and Turkey. So again, we'd have to be patient with him. Though I think he is a talented player, he is, but it's one that I'd be sort of cautious about. I wouldn't quite know what to expect and how it will go.
Yeah.
Though I do see him as a player that traditionally, somebody who's a bit is fancied, but has maybe sort of gone a little bit astray. Somebody that is somebody who I think Unai can work well with. Yeah, I mean, otherwise, I mean, the positions for me have been all summer kind of the backup goalkeeper situation worries me. If Emi Martinez,
Well, I tell you what, that moment where Martinez could first thought that ran through my head was Robin Olsen. It was like it wasn't whether like it was a red or not. It was like if this is a red, then we really are in trouble.
That was when the ring got stuck to your finger, wasn't it? That exact moment.
Yeah, that exact moment.
Yeah.
It was a high pressure moment for
My
sure.
favorite thing about that, though, and I genuinely like, as miserable as it was, it really made me laugh out loud in the middle of the pub I was in, was the slow motion, and it just shows Emmy just staring at the player, Almiron, puts his hands on him, and then after it just immediately starts wagging the finger.
He dived.
No, didn't do anything wrong. He's an absolute wrestling villain. He is. He would just whack someone with a chair behind the referee's back and then hold his hands up.
Or just play possum like he's been hit with the chair.
Yeah, a bit Eddie Guerrero. Do you remember Eddie Guerrero?
Yeah. Like cheat and steal. No, it is very true, and that did make me laugh. That made me laugh more when I saw a yellow card, not a red. I'll be honest. But yes, once I knew it was the yellow, then I did laugh. But I mean, Martinez actually did really well, didn't he? Yes.
He might,
which is quite frightening considering he still conceded 5 goals.
And if Olsen had been in goal, it wouldn't have been 5-1. It would have been substantially worse.
Potentially, yeah.
But I think I think that backup keeper situation concerns me. The striker situation as well continues to worry me in the sense of, Archer's been linked away now. Sheffield United, I am aware of. That could be happening, and that means that surely there's got to be a striker coming in that can act as backup or work with Watkins. Just because, if God forbid an injury happens to Watkins, then I mean, Jesus,
we're in trouble.
Really worrying, isn't it? So those two positions have been really sticking out to me. We've all talked about the right back situation. Tyler Adams is kind of there. He didn't go to Chelsea in the end. So,
and for 20 million, if that is the buyout fee, then in this market, it's very reasonable, isn't it? But I wonder whether wages could be an issue. I don't know
if he could play in a back three as well. He's got various facilities that I think would be helpful.
I mean, I feel that there's probably a reason why we haven't gone from yet.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. It almost feels quite obvious to go for someone like that, but there must be some reason why we haven't.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I'd say is I'd anticipate movement. If I was to say last season where was Villa's weakest bit, it was probably the right hand side where it felt like we could improve there. I think signing Diaby, he's traditionally a right winger. Will he be good at tracking back? I don't know. It's not been his strong point for Bayer Leverkusen. As an attacking right winger, he's super, and he's done very well as a second striker, which I think is probably where Unai's going to stick him. Maybe McGinn goes out right for the next game, to just sort out some of the deficiencies out there defensively as well. Jaden Philogene as well. He can play out there, and he did well tracking back in pre-season. Cash as the right back. I know there's a lot of questions about him. I still have I still think he's better than a lot of people say he is, but I also can see that he's not. The sort of.
I have reservations about it. If we want to go kind of where we want to go, I wonder with Cash whether he's not really ever going to be at the level that we want to reach. And I say that begrudgingly because I really like him. I like him as a personality. I think he's a good teammate. He's Polish, man after my own heart.
Yeah.
But I just think there is just a fundamental kind of lack of quality, like elite quality, with him, and the fact that he doesn't really have anyone to challenge him, is also quite unfortunate because obviously with someone else there, you'd like to think they can push each other in training and push each other in terms of actually starting, but it's that's definitely a weak point. And there were some points made after the game. Maybe you feel they're valid or not, but the fact we let Ashley Young go, he could have been that kind of vocal organizer at the back when we kind of needed someone like that once Tyrone Mings was taken off.
It's kind of odd that there hasn't really been a replacement for Young, really. I would have when his contract wasn't renewed, that was my first expectation, was that we were going to get somebody who was going to sort of fill that role. I don't really think we have got anyone who had such a versatility about their game. But look, it sounds like we're all been negative, whatever. The squad is really good. I think we've made some really good signings. And I'm still, obviously excited about where we're going to go under Emery. But I just think that, I can see by the end of this transfer window, I would hope that one or two of the positions where we look light or where we haven't really improved from last season will be looked at. But look. So that's where I am on that, and I think we can. I'm now looking forward to Everton, and I fully believe in the team to bounce back and get a good result and basically a really good performance. And Villa Park just needs to be really loud and behind the players, and I'm sure that they'll react well to it.